Hello and welcome to Claret and Blue. My name's Dan Rowlands and I'm joined here by Dan Bardell for a bonus video this week, one of our unscripted, let's just chat about something for 15 minutes. Dan, you came to me early today as we filmed this saying, I want to do a video about the transfer window in January and why I think Villa won't or shouldn't sign anybody. First of all, how are you?
Good. When you introed your name, though, I still say your name wrong after all these years. I still call you Dan Rollinson. I've clocked that in the intro. Trying to almost make yourself seem a little bit more posh by the way you pronounced it, I would say.
It's literally how I pronounced it for 28 years of my life, or 26 whenever I started speaking.
Definitely Rollinson.
I have got the baby down here on the floor. I am supervising him. I can see him, and you'll probably hear him at some point. If he cries, I'll have to pick him up. But my partner is still at work. I thought she would be back by now, and she isn't. This is the only time we could do. So, we'll just get straight into it. Where's this come from? Why don't you think we should sign somebody? Surely if Villa are pushing for the top four, we might think we need reinforcements, no?
I've obviously been doing podcasts like I always do and doing various things and talking about Villa, and we're approaching January now, and obviously this time of year you do start to think about transfers. You think about how your football club is set, the direction that they're travelling in, how you think the season might go. I predicted at the start of the season we'd finish fifth with the squad that we had, and then when August ended, I maybe was a little bit more conservative because we'd had a few injuries, but I didn't expect Ramsey Moreno to be out for so long. But the Buendia and Mings injuries felt like big things for us, and it kind of dampened expectations a little bit. But then as time's gone on and I've seen the other teams, I watch a hell of a lot of football, watching the other sides, I think it's become clear to me, and I've been thinking this for a while and I've said it numerous times, that I think Manchester City, Liverpool and Arsenal are the three best teams in the Premier League. They're going to be the top three. We're obviously the fourth best team in the Premier League at the moment. So I think we're going really, really well. Sometimes when you bring a transfer in, it can actually disrupt what you've got and do more harm than good at the moment. We've got quite a lot of players who are really good footballers that aren't getting in the team, aren't getting in the first 11 for Premier League games. Sometimes adding someone else into that mix can actually upset the apple cart a bit. And bearing in mind that Moreno and Ramsey have not played all season virtually, they're now coming back into the frame as well. I hate to say it, but they will feel a little bit like new signings because they haven't played all season. So throwing them into the mix, I think we're pretty well set in terms of squad depth. I'd have to have a detailed look into our registration for Europe and for the Premier League as well. But I'd imagine we're probably at the limit of what we can do. So to bring someone in, someone will have to leave. Someone tweeted me earlier saying that, Dendoncker and Traore are probably surplus to requirements. If we can get rid of them, then get someone else in, that will improve us. And I take that point. How many minutes have those two played, really? Bearing in mind we've had injuries as well. Those two haven't really been needed. So sometimes I think you'll actually lose something by bringing players in. So at the moment, as it's set, I wouldn't be looking to bring anyone in January. And also, I actually don't think that we will.
Is there a slight caveat that maybe like there's a backup goalkeeper or something, but you wouldn't really count that as a new signing, even though they technically are?
Yeah, look, I think it's clear that most Villa fans with eyes know that when the goalkeeper changes, Villa are not the same. If anything were to happen to Emi Martinez, I think we'd all be pretty worried. If we were going to do something about that, though, you'd have thought we'd have done it in the summer. So again, I don't really envisage that we're going to be looking at the goalkeeping department in January. I think we'll go with what we've got and just keep our fingers crossed that nothing happens to Emi Martinez. Now, I know he's had a knock here and there and missed a couple of games. Olsen came in, I think it was it Burnley away, and we won, and he was okay. But we have seen in the cup competitions when he comes in, there's a significant drop off. But then I would also say that that's not just him, because a lot of the team has changed in those games, and there's been a drop off all round because we got knocked out the Carabao Cup straight away. And when we've heavily rotated in Europe, we lost the game as well. We've got a bit stronger since then in Europe. So of course, look, if something exceptional comes up, which very rarely does in January, then I think you look at it and think, will that improve the squad? Yes, you'd get someone in, but I think when you look at our team, Premier League wise, now Moreno's back, I think the number drops from 10 to 9, but 9 of the 11 is there, and I don't think Emery wants to change that for Premier League games. I think he'll want to keep that the same. I think our depth is is pretty good. If you marry our squads up against, or match our squads up against other squads in the Premier League, the size is about right. People go on about Man City, and obviously the quality of their first 11 and first maybe 13, 14 players is out of this world. An unbelievable football team. Look at their bench at the weekend. They haven't got loads of injuries. I think Grealish missed the game because he was ill. He was due to start, but he missed the game because he was ill. But you look at their bench, and they're playing in many competitions as well, Manchester City. It isn't full of quality, and it isn't full of numbers and depth either. So I actually just look at our squad and look at the rest of the Premier League and think we're in a good place.
Do you think, just the flip side of that, are you concerned about losing anyone in January? Because obviously that would spark then we need to replace so there's obviously a lot of talk at the moment about Arsenal and Douglas Luiz in January, which is mental to me. Me and John have spoke about it this week already and saying there's nothing in it. Are you concerned at all about any other players possibly going in January? Surely not.
Absolutely not. I'm not concerned about anything, really. I'm not concerned about the manager being picked up by someone else if someone was to lose their job, because I think he's got everything that he wants at Villa and we're going really, really well. I don't think players who are at Villa would want to leave, one, because of the setup at the club, and two, because of the manager. And a lot of them will look at that manager and think, look how much he's improved my game. Look at Ollie Watkins, look at Douglas Luiz, look at John McGinn. Those players have improved infinitely under this manager. There's absolutely no chance that Arsenal, for example, and Douglas Luiz, FFP, they've not got 100 million to spend in January. And I think that's how much Douglas Luiz would cost, being realistic, at least 90. Yeah. Arsenal don't have that wiggle room. They don't have that room to manoeuvre. And that's another thing. Greg talks about it a lot, and people slated him when he first brought it up. But he was right with what he said about FFP in the summer. And obviously some of my work involves transfers, and I hear a lot of stuff that the Sky journalists are talking about and saying. It's not a Villa problem. It's a Premier League problem. Teams are worried by FFP. You only have to look at what's happened with Everton. I don't think teams in general will be splashing a lot of money in January. I actually think this could end up being one of the quietest Januaries that there's been for many a year. But to answer your original question, I'm not worried about any player leaving Aston Villa. The manager leaving would seriously worry me, but I don't think that's going to happen either. I just don't think teams can come and pick off our players now. We're fourth in the Premier League heading into December. We're in a phenomenal position, and if you look at the points tally over 2023, there's barely any teams in the Premier League that are better than us.
You're obviously back on Sky this January for the quietest transfer window ever, the quietest Villa window ever. Obviously, you'll be glad to be back on there. And this isn't a kind of clang name drop. Oh, you're back on Sky Sports. But good to be back doing that. But if it's going to be the quietest window ever and nothing to talk about, and especially from a Villa perspective, what do you talk about?
I mean, in all fairness, this will be my fourth transfer window with Sky Sports News now, and I've barely mentioned Villa across the four windows, because last summer they got all their business done early before the show started, so I didn't really get to talk about Villa in any detail. Window before, we were quiet really. We brought in Moreno fairly late in the window, if my memory serves me correctly, and Duran, who, being honest, I didn't know very, very much about. And the window before, I think we might have signed Dendoncker and Bednarek when I was in, because we'd already signed, we'd already done our business quite early then under Gerrard in terms of getting Kamara and Carlos in. So I've never really got to talk about Villa, but I'm happy not to talk about it, because I think a team that isn't active in January is a team that's doing really, really well, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're absolutely flying. I don't know what you think, but at the moment, obviously, we are the best of the rest, and top five in Champions League is a very realistic proposition for this team, and it's this team that's got us into that position. So, as I said at the start, adding something into that doesn't necessarily make you better. Sometimes it adds confusion and, someone else to think about the minutes that they're getting. We're distributing everything quite well at the moment across the competitions. I would say, Leon Bailey at the moment looks very happy being the 12th man coming on at half time. Tillemans was harshly left out of the team on Sunday after a really good game. We have options. We've got a lot of players that aren't playing as much football as maybe that they would want to. And then you throw Ramsey and Moreno back into that as well. Ramsey comes straight back into that team when he's fully fit. He's in Villa's best 11. Jacob Ramsey. That leaves Zaniolo. That leaves Leon Bailey on the bench to bring on John Duran, Tillemans. There's four very good players there not getting starting football. So we're really, really well set. I don't think in some quarters people realise how well set we are.
Do you think we're a touch light up front and at right back?
Maybe right back, you could argue, but again, I think if he thought we were like right back, we'd have got one in the summer. I think he was satisfied going in with what he got. Obviously, we've seen Conser play there a fair bit, and Diego Carlos come in at right centre back. That seems to be something that the manager likes for certain games. And I've got to be honest, I quite like it as well. I thought Conser looked uncomfortable actually for the first time in that position against Spurs yesterday, but I thought Carlos was really good, mopped up a couple of really dangerous attacks from Spurs in the first half with really composed and calm defensive work, just to kind of take a touch and pass it out and kill the ball, or these little flicks out of defence. I thought Carlos was really good actually in the first half. Funny run from him though. I've never seen him before when he dropped into that sprint. I don't know whether you noticed it. He went into a funny sprint at one time that I've never really seen before. It was like something out of a film, the way he was running. But yeah, I enjoyed that momentarily in the game yesterday. You could argue that we're weak or not as strong in certain positions, but I just think he would have identified that in the summer and done something about it. January is a notoriously bad time to buy players. We did really well with Moreno last summer. If you can identify a player from maybe La Liga, Serie A, that's a team that's not playing in European football, you've got a good chance of getting them in, like we did with Moreno, for a reasonable fee, because the Premier League's finances really dwarf those leagues, except for the really big teams that take part in those competitions. But we're in the position now where if we're to bring someone in to improve us, you don't want to be getting players in for the sake of it. That's not how you improve. You want to be getting players in that are better than your starting 11. We're not going to be able to do that in January. We might identify them, but we're not going to be able to pick up the type of player that takes us up a level like Diaby has. That's what the summer's for. Diaby's really been, I know he was dragged at half-time yesterday, but Diaby's been a real upgrade on what we've seen previously in those positions. And actually, he's made Leon Bailey raise his game as well. Yeah. You can't get that kind of player in January if you're not offering Champions League football, I would say.
I think possibly even you and me spoke about it in the summer on the podcast about when you make signings to improve your squad, you're signing somebody for the first 11 pretty much, and whoever was already in the first 11 becomes a bench player. You're not going to do that in January. And if you are, it's going to be silly money that Villa aren't going to be prepared to pay. Like, let's say you do want a right back, you're going to pay 50-odd million to get somebody better than Matty Cash. Who is that player going to be, and are they going to come in January? It's just not going to happen.
I think the other factor in the transfer business in January is that obviously at the moment we are in the Champions League positions, and that Emery can play it down as much as he likes, but we're going into December in the top four. I think the target within the club will be we want to qualify for the Champions League. So then you get to the summer, and let's say we do qualify for the Champions League, you can then get in a higher quality of player because you've got Champions League football. Look at what Newcastle did in the summer. They're probably getting I know it's worked out badly, but Tonali, they're not in the Champions League. They don't pick someone like that up, and whatever's happened, he's a good footballer, and unfortunately for Newcastle, he's not playing for the rest of the season. So you then, if you're spending 15 million on a squad player, that's money that can be better spent in the summer. And it's also, you're bringing in people who aren't going to make you any better and aren't going to add any benefit to the squad. I don't want to use Dendoncker as an example, who we signed at the end of a summer window for around 15 million because we picked up a few injuries, if I recall, and we thought Louise might go, so we basically panicked and signed Dendoncker. And there's been nothing wrong with Dendoncker, because I've actually liked what he's done when he's been in the pitch. I think he's been a useful player to see out games. And the odd time he came in last season, I thought he was half decent. He's barely played this season. We spent 15 million on him, and he's probably on about 60-70 grand a week. That's not how you improve your football club. So it would be that type of signing in January to try, and when people say we need more depth, that would be the way you go about it. And I don't really agree with that. And from what I've seen in Emery's body of work so far, I don't think he does either. Here he's joining the pod.
He's excited now. He can see himself.
He's a good-looking boy. I mean, Phoebe must be very, very cute, because there's no whatsoever.
It's a very kind of like lazy thing to say, and I've felt this a few times this season when we do the podcast about like when we try and like analyze a match or a signing or whatever. I'm kind of just happy to sit there and go, just let Emery do what he wants, and like not overthink it as a foul, which I know is like a massive cop out. But if Emery doesn't want anyone in January, I'm not going to sit here and kind of argue against that, because he's the king, isn't he? He can do what he wants. Likewise, the reverse of that. If we think, we don't need to sign, but Emery does think we do, fair enough, because he knows best.
I'd back it all the way. You know, I've said what I've said, but if Emery suddenly turns around and buys, I don't think we will, but if Emery suddenly turns around and buys 3 players, I'd be like, okay, you know better than me. I was completely wrong. I'd hold my hands up. That's just the way I'm seeing things, and from speaking to people, I'm just coming on here and saying not an informed opinion, but an opinion based on my own thoughts and from speaking to other people as well. So that's why I'm coming on here and saying it. But ultimately, Unai Emery is the king. You know, he actually got it wrong yesterday in the first half against Tottenham. It didn't work, but we've got a manager that can rectify things, and we've gone on and won the game. So ultimately, it hasn't mattered one iota what we did in the first half. He does get things wrong, but the majority of the time, he gets things right, and he gets a hell of a lot right. And if he does get something wrong, he's got the ability to look at it, analyze it, and think off the cuff and think on the fly and make it better and do something to turn around and get Villa 3 points, which he's done by and large. So, yeah, this is whatever happens in January. The space and the place that this football club is in at the moment is like nothing I've ever seen. I really think that the sky is the limit. I have never ever been so excited to be a Villa fan. I wake up every day and I'm happy with football and Villa, and that hasn't been the case for probably 80% of my life. I don't have any worries about Villa. I just think we're going so well and in such a great place, and it's so good to watch. Wolf's absolutely buzzing with the chat as well. He can't hear me, but he's absolutely buzzing with what's going on at Villa Park as well. Doesn't know how lucky he is that he's going to potentially be growing up with Unai Emery's Aston Villa. He hasn't got a clue, has he?
Fair. The last time you and me did a podcast, it wasn't this one. He was asleep. So this show's gone better than that one. Yeah, he seems interested at least. Dan, thanks for joining me. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. As always, you're very much welcome to come back whenever you like with an opinion. We'll have a chat for 15 minutes or so. Dan, thank you for joining me. Will, thanks for crawling around and being a nuisance. Thanks for those for watching. Get involved with your thoughts in the comments down below. If we need a sign-in or not, we'd love to hear them. Me and John are going to do another bonus episode later this week about Ollie Watkins and why he's the perfect striker for Aston Villa. So stay tuned to Claret and Blue, and you'll see that before anyone else.
Stay tuned to all of the Villa podcasts as well.
Yeah, there's some all right ones out there.